All right. Good morning. Today is Sunday, January 14th, 2024. My name is Lou Yelgin. I am the subgroup leader for the Hand Tools group. And today we're privileged and honored to have Ted Blachly as our presenter. Ted has been a woodworker and furniture maker for over 40 years and is a juried member of the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen. He was involved in the formation of the Guild of New Hampshire Woodworkers in 1990. And in 1995, he was an invited artist to the New Hampshire Furniture Masters and has been active in that organization for, since then. So Ted has taught furniture workshops at the Center for Furniture Craftsmanship in Rockport, Maine, the Penland School of Craft in Penland, North Carolina, and the Peters Valley School of Craft in Layton, New Jersey. And we're very fortunate to have him as a member of our guild, and we're all looking forward to your demo. So
all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually have not really done any teaching in quite a while, but it was a great experience at all those places. So just a little background on myself. I have a shop in Warner, and I'm thankful to Steve for letting us use this shop. Started in 1972, had one woodworking class in college, and after that got into working on old houses. There was a back to the land movement back in the early 70s, and a lot of us were, into the handmade houses and stuff like that. And so I kind of got I made some furniture around 1972, but then shifted to working on old houses and barns and jacking barns and all the weird angles that you had to deal with. And the guys that taught me saw that I had patience, so they would always stick me with the pain in the ass jobs, and it needed fussy attention. And then mid-'80s, like Lou said, joined the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen, started doing more kitchens and making furniture. The hand tool work, I'm sure you all do it, but it just gives you a wider range of what you can do. And often in schools they'll start with teaching the hand tool skills, so you don't become reliant on machines. And if you learn those first, then that's in your tool belt, and then the machine work will assist you further on. The other point that I've always said is learning at the bench, doing handwork and doing work at the bench. It's going to teach you more about the material wood than all power tools. You'll learn the characteristics of the curly maple, and this is Clara walnut, which is brittle. So the hand tools kind of teach you the characteristics of the wood. And I'm not a strict hand tool person. I use everything that's available to me as the need comes. Let's see, tools. I don't buy a lot of tools these days. I've sort of been through, working for a number of years, and now when I go to Woodcraft, I walk through there and try to decide what I don't need. And I'm always sort of figuring out ways to deal with what I have. I mean, I have some, I have a nice complete shop, but I don't have everything that Steve has. But I mean, for example, I have a 4-inch Makita belt sander that, yeah, well, mine lives, I have a couple benches in my shop. Mine lives chucked vertically in the vise here, with a the wheel up. And that's my, you know, that's what I use for grinding. I mean, I'll use it for wood, you know, if I'm shaping these things. These are drawer pulls. I use it for chisels, you know, for doing a hollow grind on a chisel. I do have a grinding wheel now. I mean, I just added that. I had an old one that I just replaced with a new one, but, you know, I was able to get a hollow grind by hand, you know, on that belt sander. And it works if you use like a coarse grit belt. If you use like a 120, you're going to burn your edge. But a coarse grit doesn't seem to heat up that much. But I wanted to go over some of the less celebrated tools than the hand planes and the beautiful Lee Nielsen spoke shaves. And, I have some of those too, but it seems like the edge tools get all the glory, you know, and the rasps or whatever are some frowned upon by some people, but I find them very useful. I don't want to disparage the edge tools. I use them all. You know, I use scrapers, planes. But I just wanted to hit on some of the abrading tools. You all know Garrett Hack. I've known him forever, and he's always accusing me of being an abrader, you know. And I don't know, all his beautiful shavings flying all over the place. It still leaves little flats that have to be dealt with. But he's a good friend. We've been ribbing each other for years. So, you know, one thing that is I want to cover here is holding the work, the importance of you know, how you hold the work to work on it. If you don't have a way to hold something, it's really worth it to design something that's going to enable you to work on a part efficiently. And it may take a half an hour to come up with some jigging setup or some special clamp block. But if it's going to enable you to work on something efficiently, accurately, without damaging it, you know, it's really worth the time. And it's part of the adventure. You know, it's part of the work coming up with this stuff. Machinist vices are Steve's probably got one. They're very handy, yeah, and you can you know, make specialized blocks that let's see, this has a little rare earth magnet in the back of it. You know, I use this on clamps. You know, just put that there. But in a machinist vise, you can set up specialized blocks to hold apart. I have one in my shop. This is a pattern maker's vise, or something they call a gunstock vise. The jaws, as you can see, they swivel. So if you have odd parts, you know, that, you know, and that spins around. So there's all sorts of, and we were talking about this elevated bench. One thing I have in my shop is I have a cinder block, and I also have a plywood box. It's maybe 20 inches by 17 inches by 9 inches. And I'll use that to stand on. Like if I'm sanding here, you know, sometimes if you can get yourself above the work, your arm is not in the same spot. You're more like this. And so, you know, you do it to get away from the dust, but also to be comfortable working. But anyway, if you don't have one of these, you know, you can something like this. So now you have this little vise, and say for example, so with this, and you can imagine there are other configurations. You know, you want to turn it like that. You can get in there and do whatever. So they're handy, and I have them padded with leather. Again, I talked about custom blocks for holding a piece of work. You may have to make something. This is an example of just a padded block, and it's for a chair run that we were doing. It's got a little curve on it. It's got leather, and then there's sandpaper on top for gripping it. This is another one that's just covered with cork. You know, as I'm doing this demo, in my head, I'm just thinking chair parts, because I've done a lot of them, and a lot of the parts have these curving shapes to them. So, and depending on what you're doing to the part, you may need to have different setups. This is not going to solve everything. You know, if you're chopping a mortise or something like that, you've got this part that goes up like this. Well, you want to put a block under it and make sure it's, you know, tight to the bench. So when you're chopping, you know, it's not bouncing around. Sometimes you can. This is a big block, but so this was like screwed to the bottom of something in a place where it didn't matter. I can't exactly remember what this is for, but I've made a number of these things where you actually screw it to the bottom. Then you can take this squared up piece here and put it in a vise and work on it, and your hands are free. I mean, if you have some platter or something like that, and there's you know, there's enough room in the bottom where you can get a few screws in it, then come back and fix it later, and it's not that critical. Either put plugs in or whatever. But that's just another way of holding a part so you can work on it. You want to do it in a comfortable and a safe way, so it's worth it. Workbenches. I have an Olmia. It's a German cabinet maker's bench with a tail vise and a vise over here, a little trough, and it's really the best thing I ever bought. I keep discovering ways that this design, you know, its purpose and ways to use it. And if you don't have a bench, Scott Landis has a book. I think it's called the Workbench Book. I don't know if is that right?
Yes.
So in the back of that book, there are plans for making a tail vise, and you can buy the hardware from Woodcraft. And I made one once for this, actually for Furniture Master's auction. It was a piece in the auction. It was a maple, and it was scaled down, but it was quite an exercise to build that vise. And if I can do it, you guys can do it, because I am not that mechanical. It was a lot of fun, and the plans were pretty detailed. As you're working and say you get to the final stages of things, you want to be protecting the bench either with a carpet or pads. You know, once you start sanding parts, this is a mock-up for a leg, but if this were, you know, in process sanding, I don't want to put dents in this thing, so I'll use carpet pads, and then you have to always be checking your carpet pads that there's not glue drips on them from the last time, stuff like that. Planes, scrapers, spoke shaves, and power tools. I have 7-inch disc sander, you know, that I needed for some job, and you know, the 24 grit, you know, it's like driveway gravel, you know, but the little Arbortech tools, they're a little wheel with a little disc that are, you know, carving tools. There's all sorts of power tools out there, and I do use them as need be. And then the bandsaw shaping, I don't know if you've ever watched Sam Malouf work. That is, you can do it. It's risky. You really have to have your act together for that, and make sure that as you're pushing through the bandsaw, you know, it's not up in the air where you're cutting is by the table. But I went to a demo that Sam was doing down in Worcester Center for Crafts many years ago, and it was kind of funny. There were 3 bandsaws in the middle of the room, and he went from one to the other. You know, after he broke one, he'd go to the next one. And, you know, the blade would break here, and then the guard would drop here, and he just kept moving around. He was not, he was unhindered by that. So I promise you I'd tell you about rasps and stuff like that. And this is the star of the show. Right here. This is a microplane 310 half-round blade. And this is a handle that was designed by Jerry Osgood. And he gave me one Christmas made out of pine. I still use it. I use this one more, actually. And what happened was he had an assistant who did a lot of his shaping, and she was not good with the edge tools, but she was a whiz with rasps and tools like this. So it's light as a feather, and if we had a kitchen scale here, we could put this on the scale, and it wouldn't go down, and then we could put Garrett Hack's favorite hand plane, and it would just drop. The bad news is they're not making this half round anymore. I've checked online, and I've called down to Microplane because I didn't know this, and they've shifted into kitchen tools. You know, they use it for cheese graters, and I don't know if they're the same, but there may be places online where you can buy these blades. There's a couple surf shops that use them. I noticed, but I have a few of them that I bought a number of years ago. But if you can find them and make a handle like this, it's really really a great tool. So you see the design. He's got a little nub here that supports the blade, not in mid-span, but just probably where there's going to be most of your pressure as you're using it. And the thing that's interesting about these is it's sharp little blades, and they do not get dull. It's almost like they get sharper as you're using them, because as you're rasping away, these little fingers are, they're being stretched out a little bit. And I've been through you know, working on Babinga chair parts, we're just driving this thing part after part, and it, you know, I don't have to change the blade. So, you know, when they made this blade, the idea was that you put it in a hacksaw frame, and I just can't imagine using it in a hacksaw frame because it's flimsy. But this handle works great. What I would do if I was to, say, put a dome on this, say I wanted a curved surface on this, which, if you've looked at my work, there's a lot of this business going on. I don't know, I always was kind of drawn to softer surfaces. You know, early on, looking at Sam Malouf's work, he was a big advocate of rasps. But so what I would do, this is not set up to that curve, but I'm going to just, with this marking gauge here, put a guideline on here. I'm going to get to full-scale drawing later, but so now could do it with a plane, right? And I might, you know, depending on how the wood is behaving. There's nothing worse than if you have a specific part you're going for, and you start, and let's say it's in a figured wood, and you're planing away, and you get some massive chip out that goes deeper than where you want your finished part to be. That's not so good. So that's why the rasps are a little safer. I'm hoping to get some tear out here so I can pitch my other tools. I guess I shouldn't have made the plane so short. But, you know, when you're doing this, working in stages is important. And I might, I'm just working down to my line here. And I am getting tear out because this is curly sugar maple. Oh yeah, there's some good tear out right there. Yeah. So, but with this, you're working across the grain. And again, this particular tool is, you know, it's more like a chiseling action. It's a little different than these other rasps, which I would use after this. But basically, if I'm going for this dome, I'm just trying to maintain an angle here. And you'd think with a plane, oh, you can get a longer stroke and you'll remain true to your line. But often, sometimes a plane can dig down a little bit in softer areas. So I've used these enough that I kind of have the feel of them. And another thing in working on some of Jerry's pieces, his curves were very subtle. You know, some of the surfaces were just very gently arced, and so a plane, you know, you might go a little far, which wouldn't be so good. But that's the way it works, and it's, they're kind of like shavings, right? The other one, which is available, I don't know, anybody use a Shinto rasp? Yeah, they're good. The coarse side is a bit much, but the fine side is pretty good. And I didn't do it, but sometimes I'll put tape, on the ends so your hands aren't gripping the teeth. But this is flat. Another thing when you're doing this, at the shaping stage, you want to keep your mind on what the shape you're going for is, and not that there's a defect. Oh, I got a defect. I got to work here, because then you're going to distort your shape. And this is a template for a leg, and the way I got this was I had a full-scale drawing of the desk where I plotted this curve how I wanted it, and then on that drawing I'll take a piece of tracing paper, lay it over the drawing, and redraw that curve, and then take some double or spray adhesive and spray it onto a piece of, this is just masonite, and then lay this, after I take the piece of tracing paper that I've made a tracing of my real drawing, lay that on there. Tracing paper doesn't distort, so you can, if you're careful, you can lay it on there and you'll get a true shape. And then bandsaw it out, and bandsawing right to the line, because you already went to a great effort to make this nice curve to begin with. And what was Jerry's line about using a bandsaw? You have to when you want to cut and then leave 60% of the line, or something like that. Use a fine pencil and something like that. So, staying a 16th away from the line just to be safe is just going to give you more handwork later. So it's best to just cruise through. This leg here, this is a little more complicated because I had this little hemline detailed on the bottom, which is jumping around here, but that's why I had to make a mock-up just to see how I was going to do this. I wanted to see what it looked like, but I wanted to actually go through the process. So here, I would bandsaw it out, and truth be told, I have a big shaper that I run parts through too, where I would make a jig, run it through the shaper with a bearing and a flush rabbiting bit. I can stack it up 4 inches high, and so I would mill this flat, with it, and then the hand shaping would come later. After this came out of say the shaper or the bandsaw, I would flatten this first, flatten that next. If I was doing this with hand tools, work these curves. We're talking about blocks for holding the work or working on the work. So I'd have a V block or something like that so I could shape it. But I think the key is to work in stages. But if I was just doing a leg with it, say without a mock-up, and I've done it before, early on, I would take the first leg to a point where it looked good to me, and then I'd take the others and I'd work them in stages, you know, and progress your way along, yeah. And the next ones are the Nicholson rasps, which I still use them. They have a lot more fancy rasps now. What is it, Lajolier or? Loger. I knew I was going to mess that up. And Oreo, but they're awfully expensive. And if I was just working this with rasps, you know, I would, after the, it's just a little, you know, a little of this. You know, if once I've established the shape, you know, my choices now are, well, do I want to use a scraper? And again, it will clean up the rasp marks. But again, you want to be shaping. You don't want to be getting out your little dings. I mean, you may have to get out your little dings anyway, but so that'll move you along. The other way to keep your shape is to use it. You know, you could go right to sanding, like with 80. So here's a case where I might want to, you know, I might want to step up with my cinder block. But. And then it's like progressing through the sanding grits. I usually go to 400, say, mostly. I like this Premier Red Dry Lube paper, and I get that down at Woodcraft. Mine's bigger than yours.
I got those two.
So this takes about a half a sheet, and if you're doing a tabletop and you don't have a nice big wide belt sander like my friend there, but you know, there's random orbital sanders, which you gotta be careful with because they will dig out. But you take this is a pine block, and this is a half a sheet of sandpaper. And sometimes I'll use leather on this. Go to the gym, you know. It really, you can do a lot. And I go to the wide belt sander too sometimes, but sometimes I can't. So this is, you know, this block used for flattening, for, you know. Again, it's you know, it would be with a figured wood that maybe I wouldn't want to risk hand planing because of tear out, but it's useful. The cork blocks, like I said before, are padded with leather. Sometimes that works good on when you have a little bit of a domed surface. And it seems to help the grit last a little longer. These sanding sticks I make for various little details. I'll show you that lamp in a minute, but this is just a wooden stick.
How do you stick the tape? How do you stick the sandpaper on?
This is hook and loop stuff, and I would glue that to the stick. Then take just one of your hook and loop discs, and you place this down on it and then knife it, and then you have this little sanding tool, it can get into corners. So there's a whole range of things you can do there. You can go very small too, you know. Sometimes with, you know, after a glue up, say chairs, you know, when you're cleaning up a joint, you had some squeeze out, so you got to chisel it while the epoxy's still sort of rubbery. But then you got to get in and clean it up. And so these little sanding things are good for doing that, working with the grain, pulling it out. Scrapers for getting in those little areas are good. This is an old chisel. It's been sharpened, and then I burnish a little hook on it like you would a scraper. And so you can get in right in the joint and just pull it straight out. And sometimes you can just do it with a straight blade too, you know, to, again, see what's working for you. Is like inside curves are really, you know, those are the kind of hard to deal with, yes, me. This is a hard rubber pad that's just something another craftsman gave me. I think it's a old belting or something like that. And it's very, you know, hard rubber, but it's flexible, so you can, you know, you can sort of bend down into your curve. Another specialized sanding block. This is for my sliding dovetails that are too tight, you know.
That never happens.
You just get it there.
That never happens, does it?
Well, if you make them tapered, it's better. But that's just ground to that bevel, and I can tune it up pretty good. Keep in mind that you're still trying to shape that curve rather than get the, you want to get sanding scratches out too, of course, but you know, keep in mind you want to maintain that shape if it's a specific shape you're after. After you've progressed through your shaping, the next, like the last thing you do would be to break the edges. It's a really important part of kind of finishing a piece, is rounding over of the edges to whatever degree you want. Functions as, in furniture, if you have an edge that's rounded, it's going to wear, you know, a little better than a crisp edge, you know, it's more susceptible to dings and stuff. But what, I mean, we used to see this a lot in the league. People would come in and they'd bring furniture in to be juried. And everything would look pretty good. And then it was like at the end, they just quickly rounded the edges. And there's inconsistencies in that edge. And it's the way, what you want is a consistent edge. Now this is kind of heavy on this side, and I can pass this around. But you don't want any flats, and you want this transition just to roll around the corner. And it's important in the perception of a piece. It actually, you know, how the light hits it. And the way you get it is with a block. I mean, if you're just taking a piece of sandpaper and going like this, you might get inconsistencies because of the wood density may be different here and there or something, or your pressure's different. But if you have a block, you know, you get some light skating across there, and you're looking close, you know, you can get in there and do a nice job. This is already done, but it's just you have more control with a block than if you just have a folded piece of sandpaper. So it kind of makes a difference in how a piece looks. If you're using scrapers in conjunction with sanding, if you're switching from one to the other, it's good to brush it off, or we use a piece of leather sometimes to to get the grit off, so you're not dulling your scraper with the grit that's there. Steve showed you his all his different scrapers that are shaped. And then gooseneck for inside curves. I have this. This is a cabinet scraper, right? And this is a hand scraper, right? I don't have a scraper plane now. Sometimes I'll make the little scratch stock deals. I will use this. You know, if I have some figured wood that I'm trying to think when I've used this on like bigger parts. You know, where rasping might be a little bit much, but you know, use this. So this is still a product. It's for sale. It's, you know, it's got to be careful of it, but this is about as sculptural as I get. It's a floor lamp, and it would. I've done it. This design twice, and there's another one that's similar that I also did twice, and it would have a, well, it's two pieces glued together. It would have a Peter Block lampshade. This is mahogany, which is a very easy, forgiving wood to work with. I can understand why all the traditional guys, you know, would love it. It's mostly, it's pretty nice to work with, very friendly. And it actually started with visiting Peter's shop, and he had a lampshade up there that had a lot of spalting on it and some colors in it, and I saw the shade and I imagined like an African woman form with colorful beads, and it was just an impression I had, and so I tried a mock-up, you know, got some pine and it actually, her arm was up like this, I believe, beads, and I started chiseling away, wondering if I could do this. And then I got the paints out, started painting, and I realized, yeah, I don't think I can do this right. So that mock-up ended up being a scarecrow in our garden. But so I shifted to something that I was, you know, I like to use curves in the work, and so I shifted to this. So it's two pieces of mahogany that are, I guess there's 12-quarter glued together, and there's a channel for the wire that goes down. But you know, after I had the blank made up, I have an outdoor workbench, which is a big slab of pine, and nailed to a stump with a leg on the other end. And started with a chainsaw, magic marker, chainsaw, you know, disc grinders came out, various shaping tools. I do have an electric chainsaw now, which I can use in the shop, but it was, there were times when I was doing it when there was so much uncertainty of where to take off, you know, where am I going? As I work my way through the piece, you know, again using the rasps, the disc grinders for, I mean, this is a big inside curve here. So that was some disc grinding, but then awful lot of handwork to do that. And as I'm working my way through it, you know, little bits at a time, I'm just looking around at trying to get all the curves to kind of resolve and flow together. And it didn't come easy.
So, do you use any designs and stuff? Do you have to, do you use any routing? Do you use a router much?
Oh yeah. We didn't talk about that. So the router bits and the rounding over.
Right, profile.
Sometimes for a tabletop for hogging away material, yeah, you use a router. But then you can sort of take that shape and alter it with hand tools.
Right.
It's an efficient way to say remove material. I have let's see if I can do this. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a edge view of a tabletop, but instead of being flat right out to the edge, about that much from the edge, it kind of.
Yeah.
And so it starts out like that, but you have to remove all this. And so that would be done with planes or and sanders,
But which part did you say you would route?
Well, the
The other side. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. But again, I might even alter that, I would, in that case, I might take just a, marking, one of those carpenter tools, squares, adjustable square, and go around and mark a line, that far in from the edge, pencil line. And then, I would maybe scribe the depth I want to get. Yeah, down here like that. Mark that, and then go for it. I mean, I like the little hand, the handmade touches. If I don't go for machinist precision too much. When I was working on old houses, one of the things I was really drawn to was hand plane paneling and surfaces, where you get these little scallops on the surface of the wood, and the way it reflects light is, different. We were always it emphasized the handmade quality too.